Hello and welcome to another animation tutorial. As you can see, I've already started setting up this Maya project. I have my 3-pane split top windows set up. I haven't set up my timeline, so I'm going to do that quickly and just make sure I've got frames 101 to 150 showing. I have kept my preferences at 25 frames per second and the playback speed at the same. And I have auto key set to on. Next thing I want to do is I want to import the Pixar lamp because that is what we're going to be animating today. So if I go to File, Import, and hopefully this should just pop up. Import, there we go. This is not the correct one. So your Pixar lamp should say something along the lines of Pixo 2.1. I do have the new version of it saved in here, and there are some nice notes there that just says that the lamp doesn't actually work as a light source, so you would need to constrain a spotlight to that should you want to do that. And I've imported that in here. And it's really quite rigid. I have already got my orthographic set to side positive X on the left one, and then I've got my perspective view over here. I have the head controller and the base controller, which I'm just going to relax the rig quickly. So I'm just going to bring this head down a bit, probably to something like that. Maybe just set that to -3. So it's nice and relaxed there. I could also just rotate that a bit, just so that the head of it looks more relaxed as well. It's not so stiff. Awesome. Already we can see that this hasn't, the graph editor is bugged out already. So I'm just going to go to reset this, close that, and then open it back up in here. Right, so now I've got that, I just need to set up this again. So when we brought in Pixo, it decided to reset our starting keyframe, and I've just reset that back. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to save scene as. I already have that, but I brought in the wrong version of Pixo, so I'm just going to save over it. Awesome. So now we have Pixo in here ready, and all we need to do is set up these views because we want to make sure that we're only viewing what we need in these panels. So I'm going to go to Show, and I'm going to hit None. Then I'm going to go in and make sure that I've got NURBS Curves, NURBS Surfaces, and Polygons, and those are the 3 that we need checked in our show here. And then I could just check in here, which I've already set on this one as well. And those are all that we want to see in this project, just so we've got a nice clear it's just nice and clear what we're selecting. And then we're just going to make sure that this is unchecked so that we're not affecting any of the mesh. Cool, so now that we've got that, we can go to our first frame, and in our graph editor just hit A so that we're viewing all of the frames. And then I can start animating this. So let's set a keyframe for our head. So we need to make sure that we've got our head selected and hit S so we can set a starting key on both that and the base. I'm also forgetting to mention that we don't just have those controllers for those. We also have this controller, which if we have a bit of a wiggle on the back end of Pixo here, and we also have our world controller, so we can use these. We'll only be using the world controller to reset our positioning so that we can have a bit of a loop happening. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our head control, and I have already shown the different keyframes that I want on here. So you can see that the first thing that I want is I want to go through 8 frames, and I want to show a bit of anticipation within this animation. So we're going to bring Pixar down a bit, probably have him looking slightly down as well. So I'm going to bring him down to show a bit of anticipation. Oh, I'm not going to do that there. I'm going to make sure that I go to frame 109, and then bring him down, and then just have him look down a little bit. Awesome. So that is the first frame that we're setting other than our starting frame, and we should have a starting frame on our base as well, which is nice. And we're just going to go to there and hit S there as well, because we have nothing changing in that time. So we're just setting that same keyframe for the base as we would on there. So over 8 frames, we're just coming down and we're just watching Pixar move downwards. Cool. So if we select that now, we can go back to our thumbnail that I've drawn. And like I said before in class, these are just from what I would use to get an idea of the movement that I want to happen. So the next frame that we want to check is frame 13, which I've numbered here, and all I want to show is a bit of lift. So still nothing happening at the base, but for the head I probably want it to be coming forward a bit and stretching out so that we get something like that. We could also probably have this tilt down even more, so we're really exaggerating that movement there. Awesome. So now we're coming down, and then nice and snappy we're gonna start pulling up. So that started there now. So I am again going to go to frame 113, and I'm going on the base controller, and I'm going to hit S there because we've still got no movement for 13 frames there. So this next keyframe we're going to be using both we're going to be keyframing both the base and the head. So we're going to go have a look at our thumbnail, and we've got frame 17 is where we're going to be in the air, and we're going to be showing some form of we're going to be showing the movement in the air now. So if I go to 117 first of all, I can push this a bit further that way, and I can start to grab the base now, and I can start to bring it up here. Probably would have a bit of a different rotation in the air here, but I can also change how that is rotated. So I'm just showing the changes between the head. Probably bring this a bit further forward as well, and we're just kind of eyeballing how this would look in real life. And then if we go through, we're getting a real, it's not really all that nice actually. I don't like that very much, so I'm going to make sure that I'm changing how high this base is. This could probably, the head could probably be a bit higher, maybe even further back as well. So then I'm getting, that looks nicer to me. I think that's a nice pose there. Awesome. So now we're going to head over to frame 19, and frame 19 is going to be us coming back towards the ground now. So probably have this probably a bit more rotated backwards, so a bit more like it's looking straight on, and then our base is going to come further forward, and it's going to be rotating a bit more like that. The head's probably going to be a little further forward as well, because if we're moving in one direction, we're going to constantly be moving in that direction as well at the same rate. And if we look at our translate Z, it is at a somewhat constant rate. What I could do to just make sure that this is all going to be working at a constant rate, that's not a constant rate, so I don't mind. That's fine as it is. I could even bring this down slightly so it feels a bit more constant. And then we're coming back down for the land. So we're probably going to have a bit of contact here coming up here on frame 21. So we'll probably have this coming right the way down, right the way across, and somewhat like that. But what we want to make sure that we're getting here is that this frame, or this contact, is happening at the right point. So it's happening here. So this is, if we zoom right in, this is going to be where the ground is for our lamp, and we want that really to be contacting at the same time well, we want this to be contacting, and then we're going to have a bit of a follow through movement afterwards. So but we don't want it to go past this point, this line here. We want it to get back to 0 quite nicely on the y-axis. So we have got it a bit like that, a bit slanted upwards. So we're going to start squashing it down now. So over on frame 23, this needs to be flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that. I'm also going to bring the head down a bit as well, because like I said before, we want that rotation to be back to 0 degrees, and that back down to 0 as well on the translate Y. So that's how we know that we're back at the right point here on frame 23 for our base, but we're still not quite at the right point here, and I just want to check. So even here we're going through the ground there, which we don't really want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that, and because it's over 1 frame, that could work quite nicely. So we're just going contact, nice, and it's just coming back into contact quite nicely there with 0, and nothing is happening past that point of the 0 on the y-axis. But now we're back to that. I can see where I want the head of our lamp to be on frame 23. So I'm going to grab the head and I'm going to bring it forward and down, because we're starting to land now, so we're going to have a bit of action after this. So if I was to watch this back now, I've got the first part of this, which works quite nicely actually. I quite like that. I'm going to watch it on here as well. Awesome. It's a bit floaty, but we're going to get there with this next part. So we're on frame 23, and we need to make sure that this is looking fairly decent at this point. And then frame 25, we're going to have the head come down, and maybe even look down a bit as well, because this is the follow through of the action now. So we're going to be coming down and then arcing back up. Like I said last week's lesson, whenever we arc, everything in the motion is arcing as well. So every part of this is going to arc. So we've squashed down, and we've got this nice sort of movement here. That's working quite well, and it feels a bit weighted until we get to this part. So I think what we could probably do in between this, or at this point even, so this is frame 119, we have frame 19 there, we want frame 21 to be a nice sort of contact point. This head needs to go backwards a bit, could probably have it a bit higher. We can rotate this back a bit as well, just so that we're making sure that we've got those keyframes on the head as well. So the base is clearly heavier than the head, and that's what's pushing the trajectory forward, that base at that end part. So it's giving it that weight there, which is nice, and that's what we're after there. So that weightlessness that we had before is now gone, just because we've got that point of the base coming down before the head. Awesome. So we've got frame 25, and we can start looking ahead of that now. We've got the nice squash. So now what we're having is that follow through action. So we've got overshoot and then the finish and settle. So the overshoot's going to be going back up and then down, and then we're going to come and settle in pretty much the same position as our starting position here, which will be nice. So we want this to come back up now, so we're going to bring him up, probably rotate his head up as well, just to make sure that we're seeing that nicely, and then we can go to, we've done that on the wrong frame. So every so often, even I still make mistakes and I start animating on the wrong frame. You just need to make sure that you're going into your timeline and making sure that you are animating on the right frame. It is common, and you will always do it. It's something that isn't all going to go away just like that. So I've moved him, and he's coming back up for frame 129, and we've got a nice, that's probably a nice height there for him to start coming back down now. So this overshoot is him coming slightly further down just as he settles, and that's on frame 33. So if we go to that frame, we can just start to bring him down somewhat. And while we're doing that, his head isn't going to stay still. It's not going to be rotated at the same point all the way through. So we have him coming down, and then we can start to finish and settle on our final frame. We want it to look very much like how he looks here. So we want this positioning, but on frame 141. So we have a few values here that are going to be useful. So we have -3 on our translate Y, and we have a rotate value, which I'm going to copy, and I'm going to go to this point here. I'm going to copy that rotate value in, and then go to -3 on the translate Y. And now that same point is going to, that's going to look exactly the same there as it does here, which is nice. Beautiful. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the right frames in so that I can see this animating over and over. And then we can see that there's a bit too much of a bobbing up and down here, so I can just clean that up nicely by going between these two frames here on the graph editor now. So if I go into here, I've got all of these frames showing here, and on the translate Y is where we want to be. So we've got this nice squiggle which is showing the point, the height of the head throughout this, and frame 129 and 133 are probably, there's probably a bit too much between them. So if I hold shift on the keyboard and pull this up, I can move it on the axis that I'm after it to be moving on, and then we're probably going to get a bit of a nicer follow through action. It's a bit too quick as well. It needs to be smaller. If we play that through. Also want to go back to this point here. It's 109. I think I just want to bring him further down. I think he'd be further back as well. Just so that he's got that. Nice, we've got that weight coming in there. We've got a finish point. Awesome. I think that works quite well. Let's just watch that back in real time. It's a bit sudden still. It's still a bit springy at the end there. So we can just go through and clean this up slightly. Maybe even... Let's bring this one down a little bit. Maybe bring this up slightly as well. So it's not as much space that he needs to move over such a short period of time. I didn't like that at all. Let's push that right up then instead. So we're going to grab the frame here, and pull him even further down. And just exaggerate that movement. Which means we can make this a little less subtle as well. It's not going to look the same there. Maybe a bit more subtle. That's nice. I like that. And he returns back on that point. Awesome. So with that in mind, so he is now on the translate axis there, on the Z axis. That's how far Pixar has managed to move. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to set a keyframe on frame 101 for our world controller, which you shouldn't normally do, but just so that we can get this animating nicely. And then I'm going to type in here negative and that number, so that we have it move nowhere. Essentially, he's just jumping on the spot. And then we can start. We could probably with this as well. Let's hit A. I'm just going to grab the translate Z, and I'm going to have this happen as a linear tangent, so it happens all in one speed. Which now looking at it, I don't like, so I'm going to change that. And then go back to 101, translate Z, undo. We don't want these tangents. There we go. Could probably just, because we've got all of that movement there, so we could probably speed this up a bit by just grabbing this tangent. Let's grab this, let's break the tangents here as well. Break tangents, grab this one and bring that down. We can also change this as well. In fact, I don't like that at all. I want to go from the moment that he jumps, which is this point. So 1 with 3, we'll change the Z to 0, and then we'll go to the landing point, which is there, and we're going to pull this pretty much to that negative number that we need it to be, and then we should have that. Let's change that back to that. Nice. So we've got that movement happening over very few frames. Which I don't like either, so I can just drag this over a longer period of time, and we can see that happening now. Just going to get rid of those tangents. I think it's fine for this point, because we could put him on some sort of treadmill or something, which could work quite well. But that is it for this tutorial, and I hope you all have a good time with this. And I would like to see really over the next week is some experimentation with this, maybe getting a bit of acting in here or something along those lines, which we can do together. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me or send me a message over Microsoft Teams, and I'd be more than happy to help. Alright then guys, take it easy, and I look forward to seeing some of your work. Take care. Bye bye.